hanasaka jiisan. Once upon a time, there was an old man and an old woman. They were honest, good-natured old man and woman. They had no children, so they took care of their dog, Shiro, as if he were their own child. Shiro was very attached to his grandparents. Then there was another old man and a woman next door. This one was a good-for-nothing old man and a bad-for-nothing old woman. So if they looked at the neighbor's back, and they were always doing mean things to each other. One day, Grandpa was digging in the field, and White followed him, sniffing and sniffing around. And suddenly, he pulled his grandfather's. He pulled him under a big enoki tree at the end of the field, and with his paws, he was digging up the earth with his paws and cried, "Dig here, dig 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 here," he cried. "What is it? What is it?" The grandfather said. "What is it? What is it?" Then there was a click, and there was a sparkle at the bottom of the hole. He dug deeper and deeper and found many small gold coins. The grandfather was so surprised that he called out to his grandmother in a loud voice and called for grandmother to come and help him and carried the coban into the house. The honest old man and the honest old woman suddenly became rich. Too then, the greedy old man next door. The greedy old man next door was so envious that he came to borrow a white coat. To tell the truth, the old man was, "I'm a good person, so I'll lend you Shiro by accident." But the greedy old man didn't like it. He put a noose around White's neck and pulled him toward the field. "My field must be full of bags, too. Where is it?" he said, pulling harder and harder. Toshiro was so excited that he scratched at the earth everywhere. The old man said, "Oh, here it is. I've got it." He began to dig, saying, "I've got it." Then, in a fit of anger, out of the blue, he raised his hoe and shot Shiro in the head. And the poor Shiro screamed and squeaked, and he died. How sad it must have been for the old man, and grandmother must have felt so sad. But what was left to be done? They could not help it, so they took the white and pulled out the white body of and carefully placed it in a hole in the corner of the river. Then, instead of a cover, he placed a small pine tree on top of it. Then the pine tree began to grow. It grew and grew and grew until it became a big tree. This is a white man's body. Grandpa Koji cut down the pine tree and prepared a millstone. Then, because Shiro loved rice cakes, he put rice in the millstone, and he and his grandmother and started to make rice cakes with his grandmother. But the strange thing was that no matter how much rice they kept on, the rice gradually overflowed into the mortar and began to spill out into the open air. And spilling out into the open air, soon there was a lot of rice in the bowl. Then again, the next door neighbors, a greedy old man and woman, saw this and they were so envious that they came again to ask for a millstone. The good-natured old man and the good-natured old man and the good-natured old woman again inadvertently let him borrow a water closet. After borrowing the water basin, they immediately became very happy. Grandpa put the rice in the mortar. And with Grandma as his partner, he began and began to pound the rice. But instead of the rice coming out, it started to smell bad again. But instead of the rice coming out, it started to smell bad again. Dirty stuff came out, overflowing into a mortar and spilling outside. It spilled outside, and soon the kitchen was filled. Soon the whole kitchen was full of filth. The greedy old man began to, and smashed up the kitchen sink, and even made it into a sieve. Honest Grandpa went to ask for the millstone to be returned. I was so surprised to see it turned into ashes. But what can be done with what has been burned? Disappointed, he gathered up the ashes in the colander and went home. Grandmother, the white pine tree has turned to ashes. Plum trees and cherry trees, which had been standing there as dead trees, turned into flowers as soon as they were covered with the ashes. They blossomed in the middle of winter, while the rest of the world was still in the middle of winter. While the rest of the world was still in winter, Grandpa's garden was completely transformed into a spring scene. Grandpa clapped his hands in joy. This is interesting. Let's make the cherry trees bloom too. So the old man, with the empty colander, flowery grandpa, flowery grandpa, flowery grandpa. I am the most famous flower in Japan. Let's let the flowers bloom in the summer. And he went on his way. Then, from out of the distance, the Lord of the Toto came riding on a horse, bringing with him many of his guests from the forest. He returned, and while saying, "Silver cherry blossoms, silver cherry blossoms," he grabbed a handful of ashes. Then the greedy old man from next door heard it. The neighbor's greedy old man heard this and was so envious that he gathered up the ashes and put them in a colander. He would then do as his grandfather had done and say, "Grandpa, Grandpa, 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 the best in Japan, the best in all of Japan. I will let the flowers bloom in the summer," said the old man with a loud voice. "Let's let the flowers bloom in the land of the dead." Then the original God came back. The other day, the old man came to him and said, "I'll make the flowers bloom again. Let me make your flowers bloom again." The old man looked very hungry, and he was holding a colander with a colander in his hand, and climbed up the cherry tree. And just as he had done, cherry blossoms, sarasara sarasara, gen no sekura sarasara, sarasara sarasara. But here and there, he rubbed his eyes and sneezed. But here and there, they made a lot of noise, rubbing their eyes and sneezing and brushing the hair from their heads. The Lord became very angry and said, "He must be a fake old man." He said he was a very imprudent fellow, and he made the grandfather tie him up. The old man said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But at last he was taken to a wax shop